Today we're talking about the 2022 film EO. It was the Polish entry for Best International Film, and it was one of the nominees, one of the five nominees. And yeah, I heard about this movie last year from some friends when it was at TIFF and was nominated, and they were like, "Yeah, donkey movie." And I was a little skeptical going in because like everybody kind of hyped it up, and it kind of became like a meme in like the circle of really filmy people that I know. There was like, "Ah, EO, it's so silly, so funny. Ah, the donkey, so cute." I get it, and I think the movie had more to offer than I was expecting, but also in some ways I was slightly let down. I do think I really, really enjoyed it, and I think that it being only 88 minutes long, that was very much a good thing because of how like slow and like thoughtful the film is. But honestly, I think it could have been slightly shorter, but at the same time, still really, really fun movie. So this poster here, I love this poster because I think it kind of describes it helps inform the viewer and like puts like a slightly comedic judgment in their head because the angle very silly. It puts that slight comedy angle in their head, and I think that makes it slightly a better viewing experience. Because if you're going into the movie and you haven't seen the poster, which I mean you've probably seen the poster for most movies that you go into, but if you haven't, then you would think it would be very, very serious, very straightforward. The filmmaking is very restrained. It's very, very wide. And there's a lot of like swelling dramatic music. And the score was absolutely insane. The score was beautiful. Like it should have been nominated for like best score because like it was awesome. And yeah, so it's like this journey across Europe. You're seeing all these like amazing landscapes, like these horrible things that are happening to EO and just like what he sees on his adventure. And I think that because you're seeing this poster going into the movie, it makes it slightly more lighthearted, even though the content's like not changing at all. And that definitely helps. So the start of the movie, there'll be minor spoilers, just minor spoilers here. The start of the movie, so EO, you saw it in the trailer too, that he's hanging out at a circus, and he has a seemingly very close bond with this one lady who works at the circus, and then they're hanging out, and then very quickly in the movie, they are transporting, they're going somewhere with the circus, blah blah blah, and then there's protesters against animal cruelty, and they're like, no, you guys at the circus, you're treating these animals so bad, and then they just like take the donkey, and then that's his first step in his adventure. So it's like, yeah, this is literally it's very cool that like a lot of like when we're talking about screenwriting and just like stories in general, it's like you want to get like the meat and potatoes. The journey starts out, and it's like very distinct points in this. It's like the structure makes a lot of sense, and I very much appreciate it because it's like, okay, you have your normal life, which you always talk about in storytelling. It's like you start off in the introduction, the normal life, something goes wrong, and you're thrust into a new situation. You have to navigate that new situation, which is exactly what happens here. So EO, he I forget honestly the order of like every different stop that he makes, but yeah, first one he gets pulled from the circus, and then he gets started off on his journey. And I did watch this movie earlier today, and I haven't had like a terribly too long time to analyze this film. But me talking about story structure, I wonder if there's points in this film where his actual journey, like we all know that yes, he is an animal, and a lot of this film is him just like observing things. But is there any switch in his mind? Is there any like subtle lesson that he learns along the way by watching all these things? Because there definitely is some actions that he takes, and like the cinematography of like just depicting the donkey, the close-ups on his eyes are so beautiful, and just like when you're focusing on his face and maybe he's like interacting with people, it's like you definitely the way they edited the movie is just subtly genius. It's like something that you wouldn't think about really too often, but like the way they edited the movie together in those very like close sequences with the donkey to try to get you like to think what the donkey's thinking and to see what the donkey's seeing, because there's a lot of POV shots, a lot of dream sequences as well that are from the perspective of EO. And the way that it was edited for a donkey, just like the context of everything around, the shots that are arranged around the shots of like the donkey's eye, just give it like so much contextual meaning that you're putting like so much emotion and so much thoughtfulness onto this creature, and it just works so well. And all that to say is like I wonder like if it hits those narrative points of where he's actually making decisions, because there's one scene that I really liked where he's in a stable, there's a bunch of other horses, and they're treating a lot better, and then he's like attached to this carriage, and he's like by the exit of the barn, and while one horse is like he's like galloping, he's like being kind of annoying with the owner, he storms off, he just runs away. And then just like the display case with a bunch of metal trinkets on it just like collapses because like the carriage hit and everything. It's like those like small moments of his motivation were very interesting, and I feel like if I had time to analyze this more before talking about it, that maybe there is like some sort of like lesson that he learned along the way. That's just like me hoping that that's what the filmmaker did with the movie. But even if they didn't, the way that he's navigating the world is very interesting. There's a lot of dream sequences, like I said, which were very, very cool. There's like these reds that they use, like at the beginning. There's a lot of strobing reds for the circus sequences. And then in the middle of the movie, there's this one area of the forest that is just like so completely red. I think it's near the beginning of his journey where he's kind of just going off on his own. And those reds, it was kind of like a hellscape, and it was very cool. And I mean, yeah, just like there's so much cool, surreal, experimental imagery that is coming from the perspective of this donkey that works really, really well. I think that just the overall narrative. So it is a lot of like things just happening to the donkey. He is a bit passive, but the grand scope of it. When I finished watching the movie, I was like, oh, okay, it's like not really like too much happen because we're going from so many different human characters, right? And again, he is the protagonist. EO is the protagonist. So it's like the human characters do not matter as much. But some of like the incomplete endings in the human characters' arcs were like, okay, a bit confusing. But just looking at EO and all the things that he goes and all the things that he's seeing, and just thinking, there's kind of like two perspectives on it, because the movie is clearly a commentary on animal cruelty. Like they made it very clear that at the beginning, it's like they gave a warning where it's like there's images of animal cruelty in this film, and at the end, it's like the treatment of the animals was 100% on our mind the whole time. No animals were blah, blah, blah. No animals were harmed during the making of this film. And I mean, yeah, there's a lot of there's the protest at the beginning, and then in the end he's like a part of this line going into this place, and it's not great, but just the way that he is treated, and like just like a human seeing that from an animal perspective, it's kind of a very simple thing where it's like, oh, just think about how the animal feels. And so this movie is kind of just like taking that and be like, okay, this is like how he's going about his life and what's happening, and that they're beings too. And so definitely commentary on that, but it's also just commentary on like every being in general that you can also just apply to being a human and just living a life on this planet. And I think that's why people love the movie so much, because it just has that like, oh, just being alive on this planet, experiencing things, so many things happen. You're kind of just like catered away with like these different things that just happen. And you just have to like go with the flow, and sometimes people are going to use you, which EO definitely gets to use. I think that's a very interesting thing where it's like people are going to use you, use you, then you're going to lose people in your life. You're going to go about these different things, see these different crazy things happen. And yeah, so I think that's a lot of the universal appeal for this. That's a Letterboxd list in itself. Films where animals were actually harmed. Apocalypse Now got in trouble for that. Coppola filmed a real buffalo slaughter. I'm sure there's quite a few. I'm sure that Letterboxd list does exist, because, I mean, early on, I guess these conversations weren't being had as much. So I'm sure so many things happened. Like, I'm imagining, like, all those Westerns, right, with people riding so many horses and, like, shooting at each other. I'm sure things happened there. And, no, I'm sure there's quite a few movies that has happened, yeah. Back to EO and just, like, that universal message about life and like all the emotion that they put on this one innocent being. It's representing, just like an innocent being going throughout life, and it is just accented so much. I cannot stress it by the score and the visuals. The visuals are so beautiful. 1 by 1.33, I think. And then, yeah, the score is just absolutely beautiful as well. And it just comes together so well. I think the surreal stuff was tied in very well. Again, even could be a little shorter because he goes off on so many different things. It's like I'm forgetting the order of everything that's happening. But again, it was so great. Yeah, the last thing I'll say is like I just want to touch upon some of like the human interactions that he meets, because he meets so many different people. So it's like the circus performer. Then he goes to like a farm and hangs out with like this family. And then there's one scene where the football match was hilarious. That's one of like the very dry comedy parts, but it is kind of like in your face a bit. But so he's just like wandering, and he stumbles upon just like this football match that's happening, this soccer match. And he's just sitting there. And then there's this penalty kick happening. And there's this like short, chubby, like goalie. He's getting ready. He's doing this funny dance in the goal. And then everybody's cheering. And it's like, there's not really like many people in the crowd, but they're cheering so loud. They're very passionate. And then the donkey, EO, he's just right on the sidelines. And then right when the kick happens, he squeals. And the kick goes off the crossbar, doesn't go in. Everybody celebrates, blah, blah, blah. And then the team who lost gets mad. And they're like, oh, there was the donkey. It's the donkey's fault, blah, 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 blah. Everybody gets so mad. And then the winning team starts parading in the streets. And it's like, there was like 2 like sets of bleachers outside and that were not very full. And then you guys are parading in the streets for this like what level of soccer is it? I don't understand, but and then they're at this bar celebrating, and then the losing team comes in and like beats them all up, and then they leave the bar because the winning team, let me give you context, the winning team brought EO into the bar with them because he's their celebratory donkey, and then the losing team beats everybody up, leaves the bar, and there's like, oh, there's a donkey, and then they just like beat this donkey senseless. It was crazy. It was crazy. He was just trying to have a good time. That sequence was great. I think that sequence was like a jolt of energy, where a lot of the rest of the movie is kind of more meditative. Then there's stuff with the trucker. So he's in the trucker's truck, and then the trucker, gets in this incident, and then randomly he's just sitting in his car after, this incident with this woman, and then somebody just like slits his throat. It was crazy. It was insane. I was like, what is happening? Is this meaningful in some way? I don't know. It's just showing the brutality of man. You lose people in your life sometimes. I don't know. And then he goes to that other guy who's like this like pastor youth guy. I don't know. He's not that old, but I don't even know what was going on there. There's this whole dramatic tension. And then Isabelle Huppert shows up, who's like the one notable actor in this movie. And then they have this whole conversation. It's like, oh, I'm not giving you the money. We sold this house. I'm going to break all these plates. And it's like, I don't really know what was going on. It was a good scene. It's like these kinds of like, kind of pretentious movies that I've seen a few that I do like a few, where it's like, they're like so wrapped up in the, I don't know, in the themes of the entire movie. And then they just have sequences that you just like can't really contextualize. And they're just so like, they feel very real. But because they feel so real and the dialogue was written very well, they feel very like they're not feeding you all the information. Maybe it's just me being stupid, but it's like, I don't really know what's going on there. It's like, yeah, he's just going through his life, and maybe there's not much more to it. Maybe it's like this guy, he's going through his life. He had gambling problems in the past, and then, they're selling the house, he used to support you, blah, 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 be your own man, blah, blah, blah. Hey, but this donkey's here for me. Maybe that's it. That could definitely be it. Found a new friend along the way. But in the end, it's a story of an innocent being, EO, cute little donkey. I would highly recommend it. Yeah, it's a great time. Definitely deserved the Best Picture nomination. Again, I think the cinematography and the sound design was absolutely phenomenal. And the editing too, again, underrated. The editing, I think, just to contextualize everything and like get you to see from the perspective of the donkey, it just worked. It worked so well. I thought it was great. Really, really fun. Glad I watched it.